Hey, does anybody remember the time when Drew Bledsoe was actually kind of a big deal? Or how about Rich Gannon? Or one of the best examples is Colin Kaepernick. There's all these guys out there that go from being not only superstars, but absolutely household names to suddenly falling off the map. So, what happened? Playing quarterback in the NFL is one of the most important jobs in all of sports. So when we see a guy rise to the top of the profession and achieve superstar status, it almost catches the public off guard. Particularly because we've seen so many QBs, even some who were stars in college, struggle in the pros. But what's even more surprising is when we see a superstar quarterback fall off the proverbial cliff and become forgettable almost overnight. Today, we're taking a look back at 10 NFL signal callers who went from superstar to forgettable. While Tom Brady had never seemed to suffer the fall from grace that ESPN's Max Kellerman famously asserted he would, his longtime counterpart and rival in the AFC, Peyton Manning, sure did. It's actually pretty insane how quickly it happened to Manning, too. He went from 4,727 passing yards and 39 touchdowns to being benched for Brock Osweiler. But I suppose that's what happens. After all, Peyton's interception total in 2015 nearly doubled his touchdowns. He does get a little bit of a pass considering how late it was in his career. Plus, he did bounce back from what many feared to be a career-ending surgery in 2011 to play 3 more phenomenal seasons with a new organization. But man, did he become forgettable pretty dang quick. Now, to understand the magnitude of his disappearing act, it's also important to recognize just how ridiculous he was during the majority of his career. Especially because some of the younger fans might not realize how dominant he was. Manning was a 5-time MVP, 14-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro selection, and after his challenging rookie year, regularly was atop the league leaderboard and most of the key passing statistics. And he always had his team in playoffs. 2001 was the only season after that aforementioned calamity of a rookie season that Peyton didn't post a winning record. I only say this to say that if Peyton Manning could go from the mountaintop in 2014 and 2015, a 2-year stretch in which he totaled 94 touchdowns and over 10,000 yards, to a complete afterthought, if not a liability on an otherwise stellar Broncos team, then, well, it can happen to anyone. While we're on the subject of Tom Brady's adversaries, let's talk about another one who actually shared a locker room with Brady. That is, until Brady unceremoniously usurped him. Drew Bledsoe. From 94, Bledsoe's second season as a pro, to 96, he averaged over 4,000 passing yards per season. And this predated the inflated passing numbers that we see nowadays. At the time, expectations were sky high, and it looked like Bledsoe could be destined for Canton. Number 1 overall pick, turned into perennial Pro Bowler, and then, bam! Seemingly out of nowhere, he became an average Joe. Everyone knows the story of how the unheralded rookie stepped in for Drew in 01 when he went down with an injury. But there were, however, some warning signs that Bledsoe's star was destined to fall. The former Patriot signal caller earned Pro Bowl honors during 3 of his first 5 NFL seasons. But, and this is a big ol' but, during the 3 seasons sandwiched between his final Pro Bowl season as a Patriot and 2001, when Brady took over for him, his performance was actually pretty inconsistent. He averaged 16 interceptions per season during that stretch, and the Patriots were mediocre at best. And then once Brady took over, well, that was pretty much curtains for Bledsoe as a superstar quarterback in the NFL. He did, to his credit, have a couple of decent seasons after leaving New England, however, even earning another trip to the Pro Bowl in Buffalo, albeit with a middle-of-the-road Bills team. Yes, injuries and circumstance played a role in the whole thing, but there is no denying that his days as a fearsome star QB in the NFL were over. Bledsoe became but another name in the box score. Alright, staying in that era, Rich Gannon is another name that once struck fear into the hearts of defensive coordinators all around the NFL. He spent the first 5 years of his career in Minnesota, where his performance was wildly inconsistent, and he actually struggled to gain a foothold as a true starter in the NFL. In fact, Gannon didn't start more than 12 games in a season until 1999, 12 years after he was taken in the 4th round. But when he landed the starting gig in Oakland, he blossomed into a true star. He made it to 4 consecutive Pro Bowls, earning 2 All-Pro selections along the way, and even earning MVP honors in 2002 when he led the league in passing with 4,689 yards and 26 touchdowns to just 10 interceptions. His descent into forgettability, however, was just as strange as his ascent to stardom. After his MVP campaign in 2002, he turned back into a pumpkin, getting injured midway through the 2003 season, never to regain full-time starter status again, let alone superstar status. Gannon does deserve a little bit of slack, though, since his disappearing act coincided with injury and age, but it's pretty crazy how quickly he went from NFL MVP, leading his team to the Super Bowl, to a footnote in NFL history. Kurt Warner is one of the few players to have a career trajectory similar to Gannon's. In fact, Warner's story is even more dramatic than Gannon's. Warner went undrafted in the 1994 NFL Draft, instead bouncing around the off-circuit track, playing in the now defunct IFL and NFL Europe. His performance there got him a chance in St. Louis, though. He attempted just 11 passes during the 98 season, but burst onto the scene in 1999, winning league MVP honors while leading the Rams to a 13-3 record and one of the most improbable Super Bowl titles of all time. And his next 2 seasons as a Ram were much of the same. The team was good, almost winning another Super Bowl in 2001, and Warner put up numbers, earning 2 more trips to the Pro Bowl and another All-Pro selection. But the following year, out of nowhere, it all seemed to be over for Warner and the Rams. The team went 0-3 to start the season, with Warner chucking 7 interceptions to just 1 touchdown, before breaking a finger in Week 4, which caused him to miss the bulk of the season. The following year, Warner got benched during Week 1 after he fumbled a cartoonish 6 times. And from that point on, Kurt Warner as we knew him, the bona fide star quarterback, ceased to exist. He did, however, have a nice little run during the twilight of his career in Arizona, making another shocking run to the Super Bowl in 2009. But sadly, it ended in a disappointing loss to the Steelers, rendering the last few years of his career essentially forgettable in the grand scheme of things, especially considering how bright his star was burning during those greatest show on turf days. Interestingly, the guy who took over for Warner in St. Louis back in the day, Mark Bulger, met a similar fate. His career got off to a red-hot start. He went 6-1 in his first 7 starts, which came in relief of Warner. He followed that up by making the Pro Bowl in 2003 during his first season as the full-time starter, and led the Rams to back-to-back playoff appearances. Unfortunately for Rams fans, he fizzled out extremely quickly, and his issues with accuracy and protecting the football started to cause the team to struggle. He played 5 more seasons in the NFL, all for the Rams, and in 3 of them, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Now, expectedly, the best the team finished during that stretch was 8-8, and Bulger's record as the starter was 15-40, which admittedly is so bad that his transition from star to forgettable might be better characterized as star to terrible. You know, Dante Culpepper, another 2000 star who played quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, actually followed a remarkably similar trajectory to Bulger. He became the full-time starter during his second year as a pro, which, in Culpepper's case, was during the 2000 campaign. Culpepper actually put up some pretty ridiculous numbers that year, completing 62.7% of his passes for 33 touchdowns and leading the Vikes to an 11-5 record to boot. He really cemented himself as a star in the league when he put up monster seasons in 2003 and 2004, including a 4,717-yard, 39-touchdown 04 season. Unfortunately, injuries caught up to him, and his performance fell off dramatically. He lasted 5 more seasons in the NFL, 1 more with the Vikings, before making stops in Miami, Oakland, and finally Detroit, winning just 5 games across 27 starts. A far cry from his glory days in the purple and gold. This is kind of like what we saw play out for 2 other young quarterbacks in the 2010s, Colin Kaepernick and Robert Griffin III. The circumstances were slightly different, but all 3 of them absolutely put the league on notice early in their career only to have the rug pulled out from under them. RG3 came out of Baylor second overall in the draft and immediately put his 4.4 speed to work, earning Rookie of the Year honors and a trip to the Pro Bowl in 2012. Not to mention that he carried a generally hapless Washington Redskins team to the playoffs, injecting life into a franchise that hadn't had much to celebrate in well over a decade. During those playoffs, however, he suffered a nasty knee injury and was just never the same. Kaepernick, on the other hand, was a former second-round pick that the Niners took as a low-risk, high-reward proposition. He got his chance to start in 2012 when San Francisco's starting quarterback, Alex Smith, went down with injury. And Cap shocked everyone with a 3-year stretch during which he was downright explosive. At his absolute best, Cap could extend plays, rip off gashing runs, and fire the ball downfield with the best of them. But something changed at the end of the 2014 season, and his performance absolutely tanked. I mean, it's hard to keep your superstar status when you go 3-16 over 2 seasons and complete less than 60% of your passes. In defense of Kaepernick, however, his downturn did coincide with a period of turmoil within the Niners organization. The only coach he ever had in the NFL, Jim Harbaugh, was pushed out of town after a power struggle with the front office. In his place, he got a rather unimpressive Jim Tomsula and renowned egomaniac mad scientist Chip Kelly, who proved in San Fran that he learned nothing from his failed tenure in Philadelphia. Speaking of Philly, they had a longtime star under center in Donovan McNabb, who went from being on the short list of best quarterbacks in the NFL to, well, overpriced and ineffective seemingly overnight. Fortunately for Eagles fans, it happened after he gave them the best years of his career, during which he led them to 4 straight NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl appearance, and earned 6 trips to the Pro Bowl. His drop-off came in ahead of the 2010 season after he was traded to the Eagles' division rivals in Washington. In 13 games as a starter that year, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns and looked like an absolute shell of his former self. The following year, as a Minnesota Viking, he got 6 starts and went 1-5, losing the job to Christian Ponder, which is about as bad as it gets. And as it turns out, that would be the last football he would play in the NFL. Now, last but not least, I think we have to go with Michael Vick, who has gone from true superstar to forgettable not once, but twice. Entering the NFL, he was one of the most highly touted prospects in some time. He had spent the better part of 2 seasons torching collegiate defenses, and the combination of his 4.33 speed and explosive arm had scouts foaming at the mouth. The Falcons were so enthralled that they traded up to take him with the 1st overall pick in the 2001 draft. And during his first year as the full-time starter in 2002, he exploded onto the scene. I mean, it isn't every day that you see a quarterback rushing for 777 yards and 8 touchdowns at the pro level. For the better part of the next 4 years, Vicks and the Falcons were must-watch TV. But tragically, that all came crashing down with the bad news kennel scandal, which put him behind bars for 2 years. Vick became an afterthought in the national consciousness. That is, until he got out, and talk of his return to pro football drew ire from animal rights activists everywhere. And the ire turned into protests once Vick got an opportunity to join the Eagles as a backup in 2009. He saw limited action that first season, but roster changes and injuries gave him the chance to start the following year. And he put up the best season of his career, completing 62.6% of his passes for 3,018 yards and 21 touchdowns compared to only 6 interceptions. And that's not even to mention the 676 yards and 9 touchdowns he added on the ground. And boom, just like that, Michael Vick was a star again. And he put up another strong season in 2011. But after that, the combination of his athleticism dulling and defensive coordinators successfully scheming against him made his second run of stardom very short-lived. Vick did manage to stick around for another 4 years, but he never played more than 10 games in a season again. But which NFL quarterback do you think had the most dramatic fall from grace? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.